Commander Jake Thompson was having what he thought would be another boring day. He sat in his chair in the communications room of the big human spaceship, called the UES Relentless, outside the thick windows. Stars moved slowly past as they traveled. Through space on their regular patrol route, Jake was looking through reports about small problems and routine stuff, when suddenly every screen in the room started flashing red. The emergency alarm started screaming. Jake jumped up from his chair. As a hologram appeared in front of him, it showed an alien that looked nothing like a human. The creature had skin so thin you could almost see through it. Like blue glass, it had 4 arms that were shaking with fear, and its big eyes were filled with tears. "Please, please, anyone who can hear this message," the alien said, and its voice was breaking like it was about to cry. The computer was translating its words into English, but you could still hear how scared it was. "The harvesters have come back. They are destroying our planets. They are killing our people. Our space fleets tried to fight them, but they had to run away. We have nowhere else to turn." The alien paused, and you could see it was having trouble saying the next words. "We are asking the humans for help. The Deathworlders, please. We need your help." Jake felt his jaw muscles get tight. He remembered the stories from 3 years ago. Back then, most of the galaxy was afraid of humans. They called Earth a death world because it was so dangerous compared to other planets. They said humans were too violent, too aggressive, too willing to fight. So they put up a big barrier around human space and told them to stay away from everyone else. But 3 years ago, things changed. The galaxy realized that sometimes you need fighters, sometimes you need people who are not afraid to get their hands dirty. So they lifted the quarantine and let humans join the galactic community. But this was the first time anyone had actually asked humans for help with something really dangerous. Jake had heard whispers about the harvesters before. They were like a nightmare story that older aliens told to scare young ones. Ancient machines that were part robot, part living creature. They would show up at planets and eat everything, not just the people, but the trees, the animals, even the dirt and rocks. They would turn it all into fuel to make themselves bigger and stronger. Most aliens thought the harvesters were just a scary story from long ago, but now they were back, and they were real. Jake pressed the big red button that would send his voice to every human ship in their fleet. There were dozens of them spread out across this part of space. Big warships with thick armor and powerful weapons, ships built by people who came from a world where hurricanes, earthquakes, and deadly animals were just normal parts of life. "Attention, all ships. This is Commander Thompson," he said into the microphone. His voice was calm, but there was steel in it. "We just got a call for help from the Outer Rim territories. Looks like some ancient machines called harvesters are attacking innocent people out there." He paused for a moment, thinking about what this meant. The Outer Rim was far away. At the very edge of known space. It would be dangerous. They might not all come back home. "All ships, change course immediately. Head for the Outer Rim at maximum speed." It looks like it is finally time to show this galaxy what the children of Earth can really do when someone needs protecting. Admiral Mike Rodriguez was a man who had seen war before. He stood in the command center of humanity's biggest warship, the Devastator. The room was huge, filled with glowing maps that showed space in 3 dimensions. Officers moved around quickly, getting ready for what everyone knew would be a brutal fight. Rodriguez was not a tall man, but when he walked into a room, everyone noticed he had gray hair and scars on his hands from battles he had fought when he was younger. His eyes were the kind that had seen too much death, but still held determination to protect innocent people. Around the holographic table stood his best officers. These were people who had trained their whole lives for moments like this. Captain Lisa Brooks was checking numbers on her tablet. She had short brown hair and the kind of steady voice that never cracked under pressure. Major Tom Walsh stood nearby, his thick arms crossed as he looked at the battle plans. But there was someone else in the room who did not belong. Veltar was an alien from a planet called Altair. His people were tall and thin, with pale skin that looked almost like paper. They were smart and peaceful, but they had never fought a real war. Veltar kept shifting his weight from one foot to the other, clearly nervous about what he was hearing. "Give me the numbers," Lisa Rodriguez said in his deep voice. Captain Brooks looked up from her tablet. "Sir, we have 43 heavy cruisers ready to go. These are our big ships with the thick armor and heavy guns. We also have 18 destroyers, which are smaller but faster, and we have 6 dreadnoughts." She paused to let that sink in. Dreadnoughts were the biggest warships humans had ever built. Each one was like a floating city, covered in weapons and carrying thousands of soldiers. Every single ship has a full crew of Marines aboard. She continued, "That means we have fighting soldiers ready to board enemy ships and fight hand to hand if we need to." Rodriguez nodded. These Marines were not like regular soldiers. They were trained to fight in the worst conditions imaginable in zero gravity, in toxic atmospheres, even inside enemy ships where the air might be poison. "What about our weapons?" Rodriguez asked. Magar Walsh stepped forward. He was a big man with thick hands that looked like they could crush steel. "Admiral, we are fully loaded with nuclear warheads, enough to turn a small moon into dust. We also have kinetic penetrators loaded." In every ship, kinetic penetrators were simple, but deadly. They were just chunks of super hard metal that ships would fire at incredible speeds. No fancy energy shields could stop them. They would punch through anything like a bullet through paper. "And, sir," Walsh continued, "we have chemical warfare packages prepared for boarding actions." When he said this, Veltar made a small gasping sound. His people had never used chemical weapons to them. It seemed horrible and primitive. "Admiral Rodriguez," Veltar spoke up, his voice shaking slightly, "surely you do not plan to use such basic weapons. My people have energy shields, plasma cannons, quantum disruptors. These are advanced weapons for civilized species." Rodriguez turned to look at the nervous alien for a moment. His face was serious. Then slowly, he smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the kind of smile a predator makes when it sees prey. "Listen here, son," Rodriguez said, his voice getting quieter, but somehow more dangerous when your fancy energy shields failed to stop these harvesters. "Who did you call? When your plasma cannons could not hurt them, who did you come begging to for help?" Veltar opened his mouth, but no words came out. "You called us," Rodriguez continued. "You called the Deathworlders, you called the humans, and now you are questioning our methods." He walked closer to Veltar, who took a step backward. "We are bringing everything we have got, every weapon, every dirty trick, every brutal tactic. We know the harvesters want to harvest innocent people. Well, let us see how they like being the ones on the menu for a change." The human fleet traveled through hyperspace for 2 days before they reached the edge of Altarian space. When they dropped back into normal space, every person on every ship went completely silent. What they saw was like something from the worst nightmare anyone could imagine. 3 planets hung in space in front of them, but they were not the beautiful blue and green worlds they should have been. Instead, massive creatures the size of small moons were attached to each planet, like giant metal and flesh parasites. These were the harvesters, and they were slowly eating everything. The creatures looked like nothing anyone had ever seen before. They were part machine and part living thing, covered in dark metal plates that pulsed like a heartbeat. Long tentacles stretched down from their bodies, digging deep into the planets below. Where the tentacles touched, the ground just disappeared. Mountains, forests, cities, people, everything was being sucked up into the creatures' massive bodies. Lieutenant Anna Parker sat at the sensor station on the bridge of the Devastator. She was a young woman with red hair, who had joined the fleet straight from the academy. She had studied alien life forms, and thought she was prepared for anything, but as she watched the readings on her screen, her hands started shaking. "Admiral," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "Dear God, those things are eating entire continents. The sensors show they have already consumed half of the first planet. Millions of people lived there." Admiral Rodriguez stood perfectly still, watching the horror in front of them. His jaw was clenched tight, and his hands were balled into fists around the bridge. Other officers were staring at their screens in shock. Some were cursing under their breath. Others looked like they were about to be sick. "How big are they?" Rodriguez asked, his voice calm, despite what he was feeling inside each creature. is roughly the size of Earth's moon. Sir, Anna replied, checking her instruments again to make sure she was reading them correctly, and there are dozens of smaller ones, maybe the size of large cities, attached to the main bodies. Rodriguez had fought in wars before, but he had never seen anything like this. These were not just enemy soldiers or even hostile aliens. These were world-eaters, planet killers that treated entire civilizations like food. All ships. "This is Admiral Rodriguez," he said into his communication device. His voice was broadcast to every human ship in the fleet. "Weapons are now free to fire. You see those abominations out there? They're eating innocent people alive. We are going to stop them." He paused, thinking about the best way to attack creatures this size. "Remember your training." He continued, "Intelligence reports say these things can adapt to energy weapons. They learn how to defend against plasma cannons and laser beams, but they have never fought humans before. We go in hard and fast with kinetic weapons, railguns, missiles, and good old-fashioned explosives." The first attack came from the heavy cruiser Thunderbolt. Its main railgun fired a solid metal projectile the size of a telephone pole at incredible speed. The round traveled so fast it was just a streak of light across space when it hit the nearest harvester. Something unexpected happened. Instead of bouncing off or being absorbed like energy weapons, the kinetic round punched right through the creature's outer shell. Dark fluid that might have been blood sprayed out into space. The massive creature actually staggered backward, its tentacles releasing their grip on the planet below. "Direct hit," shouted the weapons officer. "The target is wounded." Colonel Kevin Martinez was watching from the marine bay of his assault ship. He was a tough man, with black hair and arms covered in tattoos from his years of service. When he saw the harvester stagger, he started grinning like a wolf. "Did you see that, Marines?" he called out to his soldiers. "These big, ugly monsters have never fought anyone crazy enough to punch them right in the face. Well, today they are going to learn what happens when you mess with Earth's children." He strapped himself into his drop pod, a small armored capsule designed to carry soldiers directly onto enemy ships, boys and girls. "We are going in hot time to show these creatures what humans do to bullies who pick on innocent people." Colonel Kevin Martinez and his team of Marines had successfully broken through the outer shell of the massive harvester creature. Now they were inside what could only be described as a living nightmare. The corridors around them were not made of normal metal like human ships. Instead, they were made of something that was part machine and part living flesh. The walls pulsed like a giant heartbeat. Strange veins ran along the ceiling, glowing with a sickly green light. The floor beneath their boots felt soft and wet, like they were walking through the inside of some enormous animal. The air was thick and humid, and it smelled like rotting meat mixed with burning metal. Martinez led his team of 12 Marines deeper into the creature. Each Marine was wearing heavy armor and carrying weapons designed for close combat. They had trained for situations like this, but nothing could have prepared them for the reality of being inside a living ship. "Stay close and watch your six," Martinez whispered into his radio. "We do not know what this thing has waiting for us." They had not gone far when the harvester's defense systems activated. The walls around them suddenly opened up, and creatures poured out. These were not like any aliens the humans had ever seen. They looked like a cross between insects and machines, with sharp metal claws and glowing red eyes. "Contact front," shouted Sergeant Beth Coleman. She was a tough woman with short blonde hair who had fought in 3 different wars before this one. She raised her heavy plasma rifle and started firing at the approaching creatures. These things just keep coming. There are too many of them. More and more creatures kept pouring out of the walls. For every one the Marines shot down, 2 more appeared to take its place. Any normal military force would have retreated by now. The smart thing to do would be to fall back and find another way in. But humans were not normal. They were from a death world where everything tried to kill you from the moment you were born. They had learned to fight even when the odds were hopeless. "That is exactly what I was hoping for," Martinez said calmly. Even as creatures swarmed around them, he was working on a special device, while his Marines kept the enemies busy. These harvesters think like one big brain. They all share the same thoughts and memories. They cannot understand why we would fight when we are outnumbered. The device he was working on looked like a small metal box with blinking lights. It was called a virus bomb, but it did not spread disease. Instead, it was designed to attack computer networks and corrupt data, you see. Beth, Martinez continued, dodging a creature that tried to slash him with its claws. These things have been around for thousands of years. They have conquered hundreds of planets, but they have always fought against people who were logical and smart. He finished setting up the device and placed it against the pulsing wall. They have never fought against anyone crazy enough to charge into a hopeless situation just to save people they have never even met. That kind of thinking does not make sense to them. Martinez pressed the activation button on the virus bomb immediately. The device began sending corrupted signals into the harvester's nervous system. The creature had been around for so long that it thought it understood all forms of life in the galaxy, but humans were different. The virus carried with it something the harvester had never experienced before. The concept of self-sacrifice, the idea that small, weak creatures would willingly die to protect others, even strangers, was completely alien to its way of thinking for the first time in thousands of years. The ancient creature felt something it had never felt before: confusion, then doubt, then fear. The walls around the Marines stopped pulsing. The attacking creatures suddenly seemed lost and directionless. Some of them even started attacking each other outside in space. Admiral Rodriguez was watching the battle unfold on his command screens. Human ships were flying between the massive tentacles of the harvesters, striking hard and fast before moving away. The alien allies were doing their part too, using their advanced sensors to help evacuate civilians from the planets below. Admiral, reported Captain Brooks, the Marines have successfully penetrated the first harvester. We are detecting massive system failures throughout its network. Rodriguez smiled grimly. That is what happens when you introduce chaos into a system that has never experienced free will. 3 days had passed since the last harvester construct disappeared into the dark emptiness between star systems. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Devastator, looking out through the massive windows at something he had never expected. To see human engineers in their bulky worksuits were floating in space, helping to rebuild the alien space stations that orbited the Altarian homeworld. The battle had been brutal, but it was over when the virus bombs corrupted the harvesters' shared consciousness. The ancient creatures had experienced something they could not handle: individual thought and fear, one by one. They had released their grip on the planets and fled back to the dark spaces, where they had slept for thousands of years. But the victory had come at a cost. Several human ships had been destroyed. Good men and women had died to protect people they had never met, from a world they had never seen. Their sacrifice had saved millions of innocent lives. Rodriguez watched as Altarian civilians worked alongside human soldiers to repair damaged buildings on the planet below. The tall, pale aliens who had once been terrified of humans were now bringing them food and medical supplies. Children who had hidden in underground shelters were now running up to human Marines and trying to communicate despite the language barriers. The sound of footsteps made Rodriguez turn around. Ambassador Veltar was walking toward him across the bridge, but this was not the same nervous, frightened alien who had been questioning human methods just days before. Now, he walked with confidence, his forearms held steady, his translucent skin no longer trembling with fear. Admiral Rodriguez, Veltar said, his voice formal but respectful, I bring word from the Galactic Council. After 3 days of discussion and debate, we have reached a unanimous decision. Rodriguez raised an eyebrow. Getting all the different alien species to agree on anything was nearly impossible. What decision is that, Ambassador? The Council formally requests that humanity establish permanent defense fleets throughout all Council space. Veltar announced. We want human warships patrolling our borders. We want human Marines stationed on our worlds. We want Earth's protection. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, thinking about what this meant. For years, The galaxy had been afraid of humans. They had called them Deathworlders and barbarians. They had locked them away behind quarantine barriers because they were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous now. Those same aliens were asking humans to be their protectors. We will do it. Rodriguez finally said, but it will be on our terms, human command structure, human tactics, human rules of engagement. We do not take orders from committee meetings and bureaucrats. Veltar nodded quickly, of course. Admiral, but I must tell you, some council members are still worried about your methods. They think humans are too brutal, too willing to use violence. Rodriguez turned back to the window, watching as more human ships arrived to help with the rebuilding efforts in the distance. He could see a group of young Altarian children standing on an observation deck, waving enthusiastically at a passing human patrol ship. They should be worried, Rodriguez said quietly, but not because we are dangerous to them. We are dangerous to anything that threatens them. Sometimes the galaxy needs monsters to fight the real monsters. Captain Lisa Brooks walked up to join them at the window. She had a datapad in her hands with fleet assignments and patrol routes already planned out. Sir, the fleet is ready for permanent patrol assignments, she reported. Earth Command has approved the expansion. We will have human ships in every major star system within 6 months. Rodriguez smiled for the first time in days. It was not a cruel smile or a predator's grin. It was the smile of a man who knew his people had found their purpose in the galaxy. Good, send word back to Earth Command, he said. Tell them the humans are officially the galaxy's guard dogs now, and remind them that we have very sharp teeth, as if to prove his point. A squadron of human fighter ships flew past the window in perfect formation. Their weapons were visible, their armor was thick, and their pilots were ready for any threat that might emerge from the darkness of space. The galaxy was safer now, not because the aliens had better technology or smarter strategies, but because they had humans watching over them, and humans never abandoned their pack.